Hidden behind the sacred stone walls of the Vatican lies not only a symbol of faith and power, but also secrets buried for centuries. From the embalming of saints using ancient Egyptian methods to the safeguarding of legendary treasures from the Nile civilization, and much more still concealed in the shadows. These are 7 chilling mysteries that remain locked within the heart of the Vatican. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. Part 1. The Hidden Remains of Alexander the Great. For over 2 millennia, generations have sought answers to one of the greatest mysteries in ancient history: the funeral and final resting place of Alexander the Great. Despite countless searches and hundreds of theories, his tomb has never been found. But according to a strange and audacious hypothesis, the answer may not lie buried beneath the sands of Egypt or among the ruins of Alexandria. Instead, it may be quietly hidden within the heart of Venice, inside a Catholic basilica, venerated under the name of a Christian saint. This theory suggests that after Alexander's death in 323 BCE-TE, his body was placed in Alexandria, a city that became a pilgrimage site for kings and emperors for centuries. But through the passage of time and waves of historical turmoil, his body was stolen by a Venetian merchant and smuggled to Italy. And in a case of mistaken identity, it was later declared to be the remains of Saint Mark the Evangelist, then enshrined in the Basilica di San Marco in Venice. History is often marked by inexplicable absences. That Alexander's body would vanish entirely from the historical record is difficult for many scholars to accept. For centuries, the location of his tomb was widely known, a site visited by towering figures like Julius Caesar and Augustus. Yet, within just a few generations, every trace of it seemed to vanish, as though deliberately erased from history. If the mummy within St. Mark's Basilica truly belongs to Alexander, then this is not merely a case of mistaken identity. It would be a global-scale cover-up of historical proportions. And if the theory holds true, then for hundreds of years, devout believers have unknowingly offered prayers before the body not of a Christian missionary, but of an emperor who once set the world ablaze with the fire of ambition and glory. Part 2. The Horus Theory. Throughout the long arc of human history, religious stories have formed the foundation of culture and morality. But at times, those very stories startle us with uncanny similarities, so much so that they challenge what we thought we knew. One of the most controversial theories of all suggests that the story of Jesus Christ may not be entirely unique. Instead, it may be a retelling of an older tale, that of the Egyptian god Horus. According to scholars and researchers in the field of symbolism, Horus, worshipped thousands of years before the rise of Christianity, lived a life marked by astonishing parallels to that of Jesus. Horus was said to be born of a virgin mother named Merit, an ancient variant of the name Mary. His earthly stepfather was named Seb, which is also the name of an Egyptian deity. Horus was born in a cave. His birth was announced by an angel. A star appeared in the sky, and 3 shepherds came to pay their respects. When Horus reached adulthood, he was baptized in a river. The man who performed the baptism was later executed. Throughout his sacred life, Horus had 12 disciples. He healed the sick, cast out demons, and even raised the dead. And then, as if bound by the rhythm of fate, Horus was betrayed, crucified, buried for 3 days, and resurrected from the dead. If all of that sounds eerily familiar, you're far from alone. The similarities between the Horus myth and the life of Jesus have led many modern researchers to ask the difficult question: are these simply coincidences, or are they deliberate continuations? Ancient stories retold through the lens of a new era. Of course, the traditional academic world and especially the Church, has rejected this theory outright. Some Egyptian texts suggest that Horus had only 4 disciples, was not born in a cave, and underwent no formal baptism. But even so, the similarities that do exist are enough to compel a deeper inquiry into how religions evolve and how sacred symbols are reborn across the millennia. Part 3. The Library of Alexandria. In a golden moment of ancient civilization, nestled between the white stone roads of Alexandria, there once stood what many believe to be the greatest repository of knowledge humanity had ever created. It was the Library of Alexandria. Legend holds that the library was founded in the 3rd century BCE during the reign of the TMIC dynasty. Scholars from across the known world, Babylon, India, Greece, Persia, gathered here to study, teach, and preserve hundreds of thousands of manuscripts recording everything from astronomy to medicine, from philosophy to mechanics, from history to poetry. With more than 400,000 scrolls, it was once regarded as the very heart of human intellect. And yet, mysteriously, almost nothing of it remains today. Some blame Julius Caesar, claiming that when he set fire to his own ships during the siege of Egypt in 48 BCE, the flames spread into the city and consumed the library in the chaos. Others believe religious extremists destroyed the library, viewing ancient knowledge as heretical. Still, another theory proposes that the library was not destroyed in a single catastrophe at all, but rather slowly dismantled, deliberately, by those who sought to control the sum of human understanding. Among the whispered accounts passed down through the ages, there is one hypothesis that stands apart. It suggests that some of the most precious scrolls, works on ancient medicine, cosmic philosophy, and maps of yet undiscovered continents were never destroyed. Instead, they were secretly relocated to Europe, eventually finding their way into the sealed archives of the Vatican. The Vatican has never confirmed nor denied this, but those who have studied its fabled repository know that there are hidden rooms heavily guarded, containing manuscripts from the medieval and Renaissance eras, and possibly from even further back in time. Part 4. The Egyptian Museum of Pope Gregory. In 1839, during a time when Europe remained enthralled by the legacy of ancient Egyptian civilization, Pope Gregory V 16th established one of the most unique museums in the world, the Gregorian Egyptian Museum, nestled deep within the walls of the Vatican. There within sacred halls stand 9 galleries filled with Egyptian relics, statues of deities, stone steles inscribed with hieroglyphs, and mummies aged by the passage of time. But one question has lingered in the minds of many. How did the treasures of a civilization located thousands of miles from Rome come to reside in a museum of the Holy See? The answer is one that makes many uncomfortable. They were spoils of conquest and domination. The origins of this vast collection trace back to a private archive, once the personal study of Pope Pius II inside the Lateran Palace. But the story truly begins after 31 BCEE, when the Roman Empire defeated the alliance of Mark Antony and Queen Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. From that moment on, the remnants of Egyptian civilization were taken by the Romans as trophies of war. Statues of gods, sacred mummies, stone columns, all were repurposed as extravagant decorations for the Roman elite. When the Gregorian Museum opened to the public in the 19th century, many viewed it as a noble step toward sharing knowledge and preserving history. But beneath the warm glow of the exhibition rooms lies a far less comfortable truth. These artifacts were taken from a distant land, brought back through the blade and authority of those who had conquered. And today, while modern Egyptians continue to fight for the return of what was once taken from their motherland, those ancient relics remain in quiet repose within the heart of the Vatican, silent witnesses to a time when appropriation was veiled in the name of preservation. Part 5. The Forbidden Teachings of Jesus. In a desolate rubbish heap beneath the sun-shed winds of Egypt, among decayed scraps of papyrus, receipts for donkey purchases, and 5th century tax records, archaeologists made an astonishing discovery: a strange manuscript written in ancient Greek, its syllables separated by tiny dots, as though it had been prepared for an elementary reading lesson. But the shock came not from the form of the writing, but from its content. It was a fragment of an ancient text known as the First Apocalypse of James, a work excluded from the biblical canon, long condemned by the Church as heresy. According to scholars, it represents part of the forbidden teachings of Jesus, words that were never spoken aloud in church, never cited in catechisms, and forbidden from being copied for centuries. And why was such a text banned? The answer may shake the foundations of many long-held beliefs, because in this apocalyptic vision, the world is portrayed not as a divine creation, but as a prison crafted by a false god, a powerful being who is not the Father of light, but rather a deceiver who forged the material world to imprison the human soul. It is a worldview that challenges the very cornerstone of Orthodox doctrine, a vision so radical it condemned the manuscript to generations of suppression. Part 6. 2 Fake Mummies in the Vatican. Deep within the Vatican lies a quiet chamber housing 2 preserved forms solemnly displayed beneath protective glass. For centuries, they were believed to be ancient mummies, evidence of the Church's fascination with the mystical civilization of Egypt. It was long accepted that these were the remains of individuals who had lived thousands of years ago. But during a recent scientific examination conducted by researchers from the Smithsonian Institution, the truth emerged, and it was far from what anyone had expected. When experts analyzed the DNA from bone fragments still encased within the linen wrappings, they uncovered an astonishing fact. These mummies did not originate from ancient Egypt at all. Instead, they were the remains of a man and a woman who had lived during the Middle Ages, only about 500 years ago, a time when Europe was undergoing profound shifts in religion, war, and plague. This revelation sparked an unsettling question: who had done this, and for what purpose? The answer may lie in a strange cultural fever that gripped 19th century Europe, a period swept up in mummy mania, a phenomenon in which mummies became prized possessions, displayed in museums, aristocratic drawing rooms, and even ground into powder for use as so-called medicine. In this climate, the demand for mummies surged to such a degree that some individuals were willing to fabricate ancient deaths just to satisfy the peculiar desires of the powerful and the pious, and the Vatican, perhaps unknowingly, became the custodian of 2 such forgeries. Part 7. When Saints Do Not Decay. In Catholic tradition, the incorruptibility of a body after death has long been seen as a potential sign of absolute holiness. In earlier centuries, such a phenomenon was considered nothing short of miraculous. But inside the Vatican, a more sobering reality has gradually come to light. Many of the saints whose bodies remain preserved owe their condition not to divine intervention, but to the intentional use of mummification techniques, methods inspired directly by the ancient Egyptian burial rites. One of the most striking examples is the body of Pope John XXIII, who died in 1963. More than half a century has passed, and yet when one gazes upon his remains, resting in a glass coffin inside the Vatican, it is difficult not to be astonished. He appears almost untouched by time, as though peacefully asleep in a sacred slumber. According to many experts, his preservation is the result of modern embalming procedures carried out discreetly by the Vatican over many years. Between 1975 and 2008, a secret group of specialists within the Vatican is believed to have embalmed at least 31 saints and prominent church figures. This is not speculation. It is a documented fact, though the Vatican has never openly discussed the practice in depth. However, not every attempt was a success. When Pope Pius I died in 1958, his body was embalmed in a manner meant to emulate the burial of Jesus Christ. Wrapped in linen and sealed within an enclosed space, his body was intended to remain intact. But the result was a catastrophic failure. The corpse emitted a foul odor. A guard reportedly fainted from the stench, and the Pope's nose deteriorated to the point of detachment. Even so, the Vatican has continued to uphold the concept of the incorrupt body, whether achieved by natural means or artificial ones. For some, this is the highest form of reverence. But for others, it raises a troubling question. Does manipulating nature to manufacture a symbol of the miraculous ultimately betray the very spirit of faith it seeks to honor? If what you've just heard made you pause and reflect on the buried mysteries of history, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue this journey with us, exploring hidden truths and untold stories, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We'll see you in the next story.